I was getting excited. If anyone still knows how Parma solved its milk problem 900 years ago, it's here. This place does things exactly the same way did it centuries ago. It starts with fresh milk heated in massive copper kettles that can hold up to 1,000 liters or 265 gallons. And they have to be huge, because a single wheel of Parmigiano Reggiano requires around 500 liters or 130 gallons of milk. Which means that from one massive kettle, they produce just 2 wheels of cheese. So I asked Davide a simple question. What exactly goes into this cheese?
We can use only 3 natural ingredients: milk, rennet and salt.
That was it! Just 3 simple ingredients. No preservatives, no additives. Which immediately raised another question. If there was no secret ingredient, what was stopping this cheese from spoiling?
There is more or less 300 dairy of Parmigiano Reggiano in the production area, and all the dairy must be follow the same rule set up of the consortium of Parmigiano Reggiano.
That's when I learned about the strict production rules and about the Parmigiano Reggiano Consortium, the organization that protects and regulates how this cheese is made. Every producer follows the same standards, the same process, which made me think. Maybe the real secret wasn't a special ingredient. Maybe it was the system itself.
We follow every detail because it's the only way possible to make Parmigiano Reggiano.
That system was developed more than 900 years ago. The church owned vast pastures around Parma, so it sent its monks on a mission: preserve milk. The monks developed a precise process that turned fresh milk into a cheese that could last for years. And Lori showed me every step of it. Rennet, a natural enzyme taken from the stomach of young calves, is added to heated milk. The milk begins to transform, slowly separating into curds and whey. The curds are broken apart, stirred, cooked, and slowly transformed into cheese. Then the heavy cheese mass is lifted from the liquid with a cloth and split into 2 pieces, as from one massive copper kettle they make 2 wheels of cheese. Each piece is placed into a round mold that gives Parmigiano Reggiano its iconic wheel shape. As the cheese settles into its final shape, the wheels are turned regularly and the molds tightened. Then, the wheels are soaked in salt water for around 20 days. But despite everything I had seen, I still hadn't figured out what actually made this cheese last for years. Until we entered the final room. And suddenly, it all made sense. Thousands of wheels stacked floor to ceiling, left here for months, sometimes years, for something you can't see. Time. The minimum aging period for Parmigiano Reggiano is 12 months, but many wheels spend years inside these aging rooms.
Seasoning create different texture, different flavors, and different aromas during the aging of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese.
And most importantly, aging transforms the cheese into something remarkable. A compact food that needs no packaging, no preservatives, no fridge, and can last for years, just as it did 900 years ago. But why do these 900-year-old rules still control everything? Where the cows graze, how the milk is handled, how long the cheese must age. Nothing is flexible, not even a little.
It's not possible to change the rule, because if you change the rule, you can't call it Parmigiano Reggiano.
While modern food extends shelf life with additives and refrigeration, Parmigiano Reggiano does it with just 2 things: salt and time. And time is something modern industry can't afford to waste and can't speed up, because the moment you try, you change the cheese. After the aging is done, every wheel is inspected, not by computers or scanners, but by human experience and sound. Using a small hammer, an inspector of Parmigiano Reggiano consortium taps each wheel, listening carefully for problems hidden inside. Tiny cracks, air pockets, structural flaws.
If the sound is not good, the cheese is downgraded or lose the name Parmigiano Reggiano.
Only the wheels that pass inspection earn the right to carry the name Parmigiano Reggiano. They are marked with a fire stamp.
The fire stamp Parmigiano Reggiano isn't our properties, it's properties of the consortium, and the guys of the consortium, the inspector of the consortium, put the fire stamp on each wheel only if the wheel is perfect.
But solving the milk problem created something unexpected, because cheese is only half of the story.
Only 10% of milk become Parmigiano Reggiano, 90% become whey.
Rich in nutrients, packed with proteins. Today, it's fuel for gym bros. But centuries ago, it was a problem. Whey spoiled quickly, and wasting it felt almost as simple as wasting milk. But farms around Parma had an animal that thrived on this stuff. Pigs. Animals that could turn waste into something valuable. Meat. A lot of it. And once again, Parma had more food that it could eat, and no way to preserve it. So once again, Loris offered to show me how they solved this problem. But unlike cheese, which relied on medieval food engineering, Parma solved this one with something far older: the ancient art of curing meat. They perfected it to an almost obsessive level. By using the unique climate around Parma, they created one of the world's greatest hams: Prosciutto di Parma.
This small area is very close to the sea, and the sea breeze comes here and changes the environment, and it's very important for the drying and aging process, also for the flavors and aromas.
I couldn't wait to discover the secret that makes Prosciutto di Parma last for years.
Basically, there are only two ingredients, the leg, the pork leg, and the salt.
Which sounded surprisingly simple. Until I learned that the real secret wasn't the ingredients. It was the entire production process designed to mimic the cycle of nature. And it began in winter, when fresh pork legs were first covered in sea salt.
So we have to salt the legs with a machine, but very, very important is the salting process done by hand, because they have to have the producers, they have to add salt by hand only on the cutting part, because that part is very delicate, and we have the bones, the veins there, so we have to add salt there by hand.
But salting alone isn't enough. Even the shape of the leg is crucial. Distance between the bone and the fat is carefully controlled because it affects how much salt ends up in the ham.
The legs absorbs the salt only through the cutting part. If the distance is greater, they absorb more salt, becomes more salty, and cannot be prosciutto di Parma. The thickness of the fat in the prosciutto di Parma, the Parma ham, has to be minimum 22 millimeter, means 2.2 centimeter, not less. And that's why, because prosciutto di Parma is known because it's a sweet prosciutto, very sweet, has to be sweet and melt into your mouth. The fat doesn't absorb salt. This means more fat, less salt inside, sweet.
Once the salting is complete, the legs spent a total of 120 days in carefully controlled winter-like conditions. That's roughly the length of a winter in Parma. Then the ham is moved into ventilated rooms, mimicking the arrival of spring, where it slowly dries for another 2 to 3 months. And just before summer, something unexpected happens. The exposed meat is covered with a soft layer of fat. Not for flavor, but to slow the drying process. And only then, the hams are moved into aging rooms, where they are exposed to the natural air of Parma.
Total minimum aging time for prosciutto di Parma is 14 months. Normally we wait more. We prefer to wait more. 14 months is okay, we can eat it, but for us it's too fresh. So this means that in the stores, the grocery stores, you find prosciutto 20, 24, 30, could be also 36 and more. So I think 24, 30 months is a very good prosciutto.
After 14 months, inspectors from the Prosciutto di Parma consortium arrived to examine each ham. And the inspection is quite unusual.
They have to check obviously the shape, the fat, the distance. Seems crazy, but they use a very specific tool, is a horse bone, to smell the legs. They put it's a tibia, the back leg of the horse, very small. It's like a needle. And they put this needle in the legs in 5 different points, one by one, and then they smell it. Because and with the horse bone, they can smell if the prosciutto is good or not, if it's old, young, sweet, salty, if it's rancid, they have bad aromas. And the horse bone, why? Because the horse bone is very porous, and that kind of bone absorbs and releases the smells in less than 1 second.
And only if a leg passes inspection, it gets stamped with the official fire mark of Prosciutto di Parma. So after Lori showed me the entire process, I realized that Parma never solved its food problem with one secret ingredient. It solved it with patience, by working with nature instead of fighting against it. Parmigiano Reggiano and Prosciutto di Parma solved the same medieval problem: too much food and no way to preserve it. So they built a system that creates food that doesn't spoil. But here's the real mystery. With all our science and technology, why can't modern food industry do the same? The answer is surprisingly simple. Modern food factories measure output per minute. In Parma, it's measured in months, sometimes years. Modern food industry is built for optimization. Faster, cheaper, more efficient. Here, nothing is rushed.
Parmigiano Reggiano is a cheese that must respect the time, and we can't go faster to make it. If we try to go faster, we don't respect the rule of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, and the result is not good. And also we can lose the name Parmigiano Reggiano.
Modern industry can copy ingredients, it can copy technique, but it can't copy time. Because time is money. And the moment you try to compress it, you change the product. It becomes something else. That's why this 900-year-old system was never replaced. Instead, it was protected to make sure it never changes.
If the inspector of the consortium put the fire stamp on the cheese, means that we are make a good job and make a good Parmigiano Reggiano.
And there is something else modern food industry can't replicate: the pride, the passion, the respect these local producers have for their craft and for their tradition.
For us, it's not a simply job, but is a tradition, is a mission, because we work, of course, all day, because the cow's milk is produced all day, and we transform the milk in cheese every day. It's not only a job, it's like a mission, it's like a... sì, non so come dirlo. It's not a simple job, it's like a mission.
But this medieval system didn't just solve the problem of preserving food. It built an entire city. And it all happened right here in Piazza Garibaldi. This is where food that could travel became money. Here, decisions were made and goods were traded. Cheese, cured meat, and the wealth flowed into the city. And as Parma grew richer, it began to build. Bigger, higher, more ambitious. So it's no coincidence that Parma Cathedral rose during the same period Parmigiano Reggiano was born. Inside, generations of artists transformed stone into spectacle. frescoes, sculptures, and above it all, a dome that seems to dissolve into the sky. Right next to it stands the baptistry, a building caught between two worlds, Romanesque below, Gothic above. And when a system like this works for centuries, the wealth has to go somewhere. Into a vast palace that once housed the rulers of Parma, the Palazzo della Pilota. What you see today is only a fraction of what once stood here. But even now, the palace tells the same story as the cheese and the ham. A system that turned food into wealth. I came to Parma expecting to find a mysterious secret ingredient, but it doesn't exist. It turns out the secret that keeps Parmigiano Reggiano and Prosciutto di Parma from spoiling is a medieval system built on time. In a world obsessed with faster, cheaper, more efficient, modern food factories perfected speed. But in Parma, they perfected patience. Here they don't chase quantity. Instead, they follow a system that limits production, punishes shortcuts, and guarantees quality. That sounds almost irrational. And yet, that is exactly why it works. And why more than 900 years later, the modern food industry still can't replicate it. Because quality takes time. A lot of time. And maybe that's the part we forgot. If you ever find yourself in this corner of Italy, visit a Parmigiano Reggiano dairy or Prosciutto di Parma producer. You can ask Loris to take you on a tour. He is an excellent local guide, and you'll find his contact in the description below. My name is Rock. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.